Happy Saturday, my friends. Miss Quast here with her handy and handsome assistant, Aiden. And today we're going to share with you some really cool art that is perfect for Earth Day. And Earth Day is a day that we think about ways that we can keep our Earth protected and clean. And so a lot of the tools that we're going to use are things that you should have in your home. And the first thing you're going to need is a coffee filter. So this, I have here a picture of the finished product. And every year I do a project or 3 or 4 using coffee filters, and they're really versatile. And so these are just the white ones that you have if your parents make coffee. You can use the brown ones as well. And I learned a new trick this year from Minnie Matisse Art. And if you don't follow her on Instagram, she'd be a great person to follow because she has such great ideas. And when she shared this, it totally blew my mind. So what her suggestion was is to do your art on your coffee filter, but instead of drawing it on a random piece of paper, she used a piece of cardstock or watercolor paper, and it captures the image from your coffee filter. So not only can I use this coffee filter for another project, I also have the print. It's so simple, but it's something I never thought of. So I'm super jazzed to share this with you. And if you look closely, you can see that we've added our fingerprints around the outside edge. And what we're going to do is decorate the edge of the earth with animals and flowers and plants that make our earth so special and things we love about our earth. So let's get started. Now, I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this today. I have a piece of scrap paper underneath. I've got cardstock or watercolor paper, and you want a thick paper because this is going to get wet. I'm going to show you using paint. These are just Crayola paints that you can get at most places, or you can do it with markers. The trick if you're using markers is make sure they're the washable ones. It doesn't matter the brand, but just that they're washable because they're going to really spread when we get them wet. So Aiden's going to use the markers, and the only difference is me using paints, I'm going to come and get my coffee filter totally soaked. So I'm just using a brush and clean water, and Aiden's not going to do this because he's going to paint his at the end with water to make the colors really run together. But it's really nice to have the water on your coffee filter here when you're painting because you're going to be able to see this color start spreading as we go. Now, one thing that's kind of tricky is that you want to not move this circle of coffee filter as much as you can. So I'm just lightly touching the edge. If it does move, I don't worry about it too much. And you can see that there's spots where there's those little ridges that run through. Leave those, because what happens is those spaces, that's where you're going to get these nice kind of lines that I think it makes it look really special. Now, Aiden's starting with his markers, and we know that most of the earth is water. So we're going to start with our green, and Aiden's choosing between light and dark green, and we're just going to come and make some organic shapes. So I'm swirling in here, and watercolors love water. So we're just going to come in and make some random blobs. And we don't have to worry about it looking like an exact representation of the earth. And the cool thing about these, and make some big and some small. And the cool thing is that everyone's looks so different, but because we're using those blues and greens, we know that yes, this is the earth. So I'm going to come, and when I'm happy with my light green, I can pick up my dark green and come on in, and I'm not being picky, I'm not being fussy. I'm just kind of working quickly and tapping in the colors. Make sure you get some that go along the edge here like this, because our earth is not flat, and so the land masses continue. And see how you can already see how it's like spreading there, and it looks like a really cool coastline. And I'll maybe add a little bit more. I'm using some cardstock this time. If you have watercolor, I would recommend using the watercolor. I found that to be super successful. It's okay. And if you want, you can even put a few little islands, which are smaller little dots. I think I'm going to make this one bigger. Now, what I noticed when I did this yesterday with my class is that I added a lot of green, so my earth from yesterday was lots of land. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to dab some more darker colors. So Aiden, you might want to add some darker colors on top, a few darker little islands. Yeah. Aiden's got a teal pencil crayon or marker that he's using as well. And so I'm adding a bit of visual interest here. Now, I think probably the hardest part about this project is once I have painted my coffee filter and I'm happy with the way that it looks, the key thing about this is that you need to let it dry completely before you take off the coffee filter. And when you do, you're going to be able to gently peel it off, revealing this underneath. So I think that's probably the most challenging thing. So I'm pretty happy with how this is looking with my colors. And if you get outside of your coffee filter and your earth is a little bit rumply and bumply, we don't mind. That's just part of it. Okay, so now we're going to go in with our blue of the ocean. And what you can think about when you're adding blue is the places that are close to land, they're probably going to be light blue because the ocean there, the water there is more shallow. And there's going to be places where it's dark blue. Now, if you're using, I'm going to show you Aiden's before we give his a bath, but we don't have to have solid coloring if you're using the markers. You can kind of do scribble coloring because when you add the water, they're going to mix together. So I'm just going to come in and I'm going to start. If you're using paint, we kind of have to make sure we get all of those spots, but I'm sure you can see as we're going that it's starting to blend out. And remember, watercolors love water. So make sure that you're dipping your brush. You don't have to rinse it each time because you're using the same color, but you're just going to keep dabbing it. And I kind of go in with blue all around, and then I can go in with the dark blue and add those deep trenches and those parts, those mysterious parts of the ocean that are really deep and unexplored. And yours is going to look different than mine. Mine is going to look different than Aiden's. So Aiden, maybe put a little bit more light blue in there. It's looking good though. And we're going to keep dabbing until we've got all of the ocean filled up to our satisfaction. Okay, so I'll show you Aiden's. And then I have one that I did with my class yesterday, so I can show you the grand reveal. Now, I think the coolest thing that Minnie Matisse Art did on her Instagram feed was she waited and they did a huge grand reveal as a whole class. And you could have heard a pin drop when those kids were getting ready. She did a countdown, and that would be so much fun with your class if you're a teacher doing this with your students. Just that moment, because it's pretty amazing when you see the after results. I would not show them what it's going to look like once we're done, and that element of surprise is really exciting for little people and for me. I mean, I was pretty pumped about this too. My dear principal, Miss Gorman, always says, "You sound really excited when you're sharing these ideas." Hashtag true story. I do love this stuff. So I'm going to put in a little bit more dark blue just in some of the areas between. And I'm not being fussy. I'm just dabbing it in. Dab, dab, dab. We want it to be organic. My professor in my teacher art class always looked for organic shapes. And she would hold the art one way, and she would hold it totally the other way that you didn't even think, and ask which way you liked it best. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just going to leave it. Now this is the hard part because I don't want to peek and peel it up. So I'm going to lift it up and show you guys that's kind of what we're looking at. And I'm going to move it to the side so it can dry somewhere flat. So this is Aiden's. And it's there on the paper as well. It's leaked through a little bit, but that's awesome because that's only going to add to the great color. So this is Aiden's here. Aiden, do you want to come over and paint this? Okay, so we're going to trade spots and Aiden's going to come over here. And one thing that I did when I was painting my coffee filter is you're going to grab it, Aiden, and dip it in the water. And we don't have to use clean water because it's all kind of, there we go. And when you're doing this, can I show you first? So we'll just dip in so there's quite a bit of water, and we're just going to start gently tapping the paintbrush where the ink is. Okay, go for it. And we're going to keep working until all of the ink is starting to run. And you don't need to stay in one spot too much because you're going to see that the water really works. And the reason we use coffee filters in this situation is because they don't tear when they get wet. They're really sturdy. I had a student that didn't have a coffee filter, so they used paper towel instead. So that might be an option if you don't have coffee filters at your house. So I'm going to move Aiden over to his spot, and he's going to keep painting. And I'm going to show you one that I did yesterday. So the one that I showed you initially, this is one that I did with paint. And so that's the result with the paints that I just used there. Now, and this is one I did with my students because most of my students at home have the Crayola markers like Aiden was using. So this is been resting now overnight, so it's totally dry. And again, this is just on a piece of cardstock. Are you ready for the grand reveal? Do it gently because sometimes the corners can stick. I think this is pretty good though. Ooh, I always make my kids do that, and they really make my heart sing when they do that. So I have the printed image. I'm not wasting any of the ink, and it's really dark and vibrant. I always love doing coffee filter art, but I found that sometimes it wasn't very vibrant because all the ink was running down onto the big papers that I used. So this is a perfect way to kind of, you know, get a little bit more bang for your buck, and I'm going to save this because I want to use it for another project. Now, that looks great. I think what we should do is just press it down a little bit more in some of the spots there. Give it a good bath. Okay, so Aiden, you're going to, you can practice with me if you want to do some of these animal shapes, okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to add some of our thumbprints around. Now, what I did with my class is we just had a piece of paper, and this was the one that I did with the lesson from yesterday. And I used a green, you could use a blue, a light blue, your choice, artist choice. And you're going to get your thumb out, and you're going to draw an oval on your thumb like that. And what I did is we did some that were standing up. We did some thumbprints that went to the side. We put 2 by 2. We made them so they were wings. This is a chance where your artists can really be creative. I did some stacked on top of each other. And so what I did with my class is we just went through and experimented and tried to make different animals. Ed Emberly is an artist that has quite a few books, every school that I've ever worked on. So if you're a teacher or you have a teacher parent, his thumbprint books are everywhere. If you go on Google and search his name under images, you're going to get a whole bunch of ideas. But it's really fun for the kids to be unique. That's too much, Aiden. You're not making a monster, just your thumbprint. So what we'll do is, with our thumbs, we can come, I talk too much. I'm going to reapply the ink.
Can I do some with mine?
Well, we have to let yours dry. So why don't you practice them there? And you're going to work and put them around the outside of your earth. And you can see that I kind of run out of room here. No big deal. I'll come on this side. And maybe what I'll do is I will turn my paper so that it'll be like this, and that will be the bottom. So always think about ways that you can incorporate your beautiful oopses into your artwork. Like who?
Bob.
Like Bob Ross. You do love Bob. So you can work your way around, deciding on how many that you want. If you want some wings, make sure you put some. Maybe I'll put a wing, and all I'm doing is kind of going on a diagonal. I find that if you tell your students or your children, point your thumb towards your belly button, and that's quite a bit easier than trying to stamp with your thumbs up. I found that to be pretty challenging myself as an adult. And you can keep working until you're happy. And kids, I have some really bad news. Really good news for your parents. The only way that you can get this stuff off your hands is to wash the dishes tonight. That's the only way it's going to come off. Aiden was over there trying to scrub it, but he doesn't know that the only way to get this off your thumb is to do the dishes. Oh man. Now what I used for drawing the features onto my thumbprints, that's pretty happy with that. So I kind of made a pattern, you can see there, and I think what I'll do is I'll just put it like that, and that's going to be how my art is going to be displayed. What I did is I used a thin tip Sharpie. You can use a thick tip Sharpie. You could use your Crayola markers. Here, you want to try this? Just be mindful though that press lightly if you're using Crayolas, because they can get pretty thick with their designs. So we can go in here, and I'm going to start with this one and turn it into a butterfly. How about I zoom in a little bit? There we go. So I'm going to come in here and draw his head and his thorax and his abdomen. And this is where the kids' creativity can really just get going. And we'll make them cute with little antenna and googly eyes. And you can maybe add some circle details here. You can do whatever your heart desires. Oh, Aiden did one, a cheeky little one with his tongue poking out. Just remember that when we're looking in nature, we see a lot of symmetry, and that means what happens on one side also happens on the other. This was a favorite from yesterday, a Kissy Fish, so I'm going to give him some little lips and a fin going like this, and one down here, and a big beautiful tail. And then I can turn my paper like this and work on the scales, and I'll make little rows of little U's, and I just stop at the edge of my thumbprint, and I leave a little bit of space so I can have a beautiful googly eye. I can turn this into a bunny by adding 2 big ears and a little nose, and he needs some big teeth because he's probably hungry for some carrots. This one here I could turn into a snail, so I'm going to start by doing a swirl on his shell. And then I can swoop up here and do his head, his little tail, and an eye. How about we turn this one into an elephant? So I'm going to come out to the side, give him some big drapey ears, and I'll give him a little J for his trunk, and I can put some curvy lines. Look at, he's coming right onto the earth. And some beautiful eyes. They're very gentle creatures. Ooh, I think this space, I'm going to come over here because I'm going to do a lion on this one. So I'm going to do a puffy cloud all the way around, but not touching my fingerprint. Then I'm going to do some rounded ears. And I'll give him a little triangle nose. And these are all happy creatures. Nobody's hunting in on the prowl. Some little whiskers. He's pretty cute. Now we can turn some of these not only into animals, but you can think about different things that you love on our planet Earth, like from nature and being trees and flowers. So I could make these into beautiful petals by just adding circles around it like that. And I can put some little seeds in the center of my flower. If you want to turn this one, how about we come over here just so there's a bit of difference. I'll turn this one into a little cactus and swoop up like he's flexing. And another little flex. Then I can draw some small little X's to show the spikes on it. It's pretty prickly. And often there's a beautiful hot pink flower. So I'm just going to come up and do some spiky petals up on the top. Maybe I'll turn this one into a bee who's flying by and checking out that flower. Lots of the creatures that do the pollinating in the desert of the cactus are actually bats. So I think I'll put a bat over here and give him a cute little eye. Maybe I'll do a bird's eye view on this so you're looking down at him. So he's got one wing and a second wing there, and he's flying over there, and maybe I'm going to put this guy being a bat, so I'll swoop his wings out. And it's okay if your pictures overlap. And I'm going to give him a little vampire teeth, and bats have really nice big ears so they can listen really well. He's coming to pollinate that flower. And what you can do is continue working around using your own ideas, stealing some of mine, absolutely. Oh, maybe a spider. Don't tell Aiden, they're not his favorite. And what I do on one side, I do on the other. And he's a happy little spider, so I'll give him a little smile and a string coming down. And you can work your way all around your earth until you're happy with the creatures that you have. Now, a really important thing to do when you've finished is always, always, always put your name on your artwork. So you can sign your painting. And that's what the finished result looks like. You can see this one I have going landscape, which is kind of like a hamburger, if that's the lingo you're used. And like I said, this is the one that's using markers, Crayola markers. Or you can try it with paint and have your picture here portrait style. So I hope you enjoyed that and give it a try. And if you do, please send me your pictures because I'd love to see your art. Thanks so much for listening today, and I hope to see you guys again. Keep creating.